It's Self-Sufficient Sunday. And in order to be self-sufficient, it's not only about getting the seed in the ground, getting the transplant in the ground, and watering it. There's a lot more to it than that. All simple things, but some things maybe you don't think of. And those little things could be the difference between success and failure, between a bumper crop and a measly little one helping. And I've had a lot of those measly one helpings. And so we want to avoid that, especially if this is your first year gardening. I'm going to give you information in this video to make sure that your beans don't give you one plate full and that's it. We want beans to be producing all summer long. And there's a few steps to that. I'm going to walk you through it right now. Hey, I'm Brian with California Garden TV, and if you're looking to join an online gardening community that offers tips, tricks, and support to help you grow your best garden ever and to become a little more self-sufficient along the way, you're in the right place. Start now by hitting subscribe and click the bell so you never miss anything. Now let's get growing. Now beans are one of those crops that I've had huge success with and huge failure with. So I'm going to go through a few things that I've learned over the years that kept my beans producing well into August and even September. The first one is regular watering. Now, beans are very, very thirsty plants. I mean, they really want a lot of water. And so if you can, first of all, when you're planting them, and if you go back, I have a bean video from last year that goes through everything you need to know to plant beans and get them growing successfully. They want a really moisture retentive soil, lots of organic matter mixed in. Some people even bury food scraps and things like that underneath their beans, newspaper, anything that's going to soak up a lot of water and hold it there. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to water, and you need regular watering for your beans. They want a consistently moist soil. Don't let it dry out. As soon as you let it dry out, especially on those hot summer days, your bean leaves are going to start turning brown, wilting, and become very prone to disease. So make sure the ground is consistently moist. Use the finger method. Stick the finger in 2 inches. If you feel moisture, you're good to go. Now, along those same lines, you want to make sure you keep your beans fed properly. Now, while it is true that beans fix nitrogen from the air and store it in their roots, unfortunately, it's a myth that they produce an abundant supply of nitrogen for the next crop that comes along. Sometimes they don't even produce enough for themselves, especially if there are plants around them that are taking part in that, in what they've got stored in their roots. And so every 2 weeks, just like the rest of my garden, they get a dose of liquid fertilizer. I use the Neptune's Harvest veg and tomato formula. And 1 TP of beans is going to get about a gallon of that mixture. And I mix it just like it says on the bottle and apply it at the roots. Now, the Neptune's Harvest tomato and veg formula also has yucca extract, which helps retain moisture, so that's perfect for beans. And it's got humate in it, and that builds your soil. So while it's helping the beans, it's also going to help the next crop that we plant in the fall. In the beginning of the season, a lot of times, and sometimes well into the season, but for me, this year at the beginning, I found a lot of branches that had blooms on them that once the bloom fades, the beans should be there. But that wasn't happening. There was just little sticks sticking out with no beans. And there's a couple of causes for this. One would be oversaturated soil, but it has to be really saturated, like puddles, all the time. Usually that's not a problem. If it is, work on your drainage. The other cause, one of the other causes, is a lack of moisture. We already talked about that, so you're not going to have a problem with that going forward, right? Keep them well watered and moist. The third is just the same as everything else we see in the garden. When something starts and then stops, it's usually a pollination issue. And so, as I've said before, this year I have really made an effort to plant lots more flowers in the garden. You can see a bunch of cosmos back there, which is my favorite this year. I've never seen one like this that's so full and double, but also still has a lot of pollen in the middle. But anyway, those will attract the pollinators. The pollinators will see the beans and go nuts for them. I see bees fighting over my bean flowers. We've got a faithful bumblebee that I'm trying to get on camera, but he's a little shy. But every day he's at the beans, working them away. Hummingbirds are attracted to the beans as well, and they're great pollinators. So you want to make sure you attract pollinators to your garden. I did another video on that I will link up in the description below. Now, another reason you might not have as many beans as you would want, or the plants don't last as long as they should, is because of pests. Now, traditionally in my garden, the biggest pests for the beans are aphids, whitefly, and spider mites. Spider mites usually come in the beginning of the season. They did not visit me this year, so knock on wood, they won't be here. Whitefly, you're going to start seeing, when you see little spots, they look like a thumbprint, a white thumbprint on the undersides of leaves. That is a whitefly egg nest getting ready to start. When you have a bad infestation, you'll see white cottony beards hanging from the undersides of the leaves. You've let it get way too long at that point. You need to take care of aphids. Aphids you can really easy in the beginning. At least try not to use any type of pesticide, even organic. I just spray them off with a hard stream of water, and a lot of times that'll take care of it. With the whitefly, you do need to go to the neem oil. If it's a bad aphid infestation, neem oil is going to work for that as well. And then for spider mites are going to cause your leaves to turn a really weird, like it's going to look like red spots. You might see some webbing. Neem oil is important to get started as soon as you see that, right away, and do it every couple of days for a week until you see them gone. Once they've taken over, it's virtually impossible to get rid of them. They will kill your plant, and you need to end up taking that out. Another thing you can do to help control any kind of disease that the plants might be getting, mildew or rust, anytime you see any dead or diseased leaves, especially at the bottom, go ahead and clip them off with a sharp, sterile pair of clippers. And that just keeps the plant looking nice and staying healthy. Now, the last tip to keep beans producing is one that should happen naturally, but in the case of beans, it's very difficult to keep up with it, and that is harvesting. Now, beans, I harvest my beans. These are Scarlet Runner beans, and I harvest them when they're about this big. They don't really have the bumps from the beans inside. They're still very small, and they will be very tender. They also snap really well. There's a couple problems with harvesting regularly, and that is just getting out to the garden and doing it. But second of all, beans tend to blend in to the vines, and so invariably you're going to miss some. And within 2 days, a bean can go from this size to this size. And at this point, it's better to harvest them for the beans inside. And when they dry out, you can store them as dried beans and then cook them later, maybe in the winter in soups or whatever. But the problem is when the beans get to this point, they are starting to produce their seeds. And once you allow a plant to start producing its seeds, it feels its job is done, and it's going to start slowing down the production of new beans. And so it is important, if you can daily go out and pick any beans that you see that are ripe, put them in the fridge if you're not going to cook them yet, or the freezer. But it's imperative you keep those beans harvested to keep the plant producing. And as long as you harvest, it will keep producing. Now this year, one of the things I've tried is I'm growing purple beans. In fact, these right here. This is Blauhilde. And Blauhilde produces purple beans. So I thought, well, that would be easy to see the purple beans among the green leaves. Well, it is a little bit easier, but if you look, the vines themselves, the stems are all purple, and the leaves actually have a purplish blush to them. So it is easier, but not, the walk in the park that I thought it was going to be. Okay, the bumblebee's over there right now. Let me see if I can get some footage. There he is. You see him? Well, I tried. Hope you got a little view, but he's a cute little black one with like a yellow triangle on his back. Anyway, so I hope those tips help you out. It's something that I had to learn the hard way, but if you put all these together, you should be able to get a bumper crop of beans all the way till frost. I'll see you guys on Tomato Tuesday.